Hello and welcome. With the world's eyes on Afghanistan and Iraq, who will protect the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo from the brutality of lawless militias? The long simmering war in the heart of Africa is among the world's deadliest, with millions of casualties. The UN Security Council has maintained a peacekeeping force in the DRC for the past decade, and this year the UN joined forces with the Congolese army to fight rebels in the eastern part of the country. The aim was to weaken Rwandan Hutu rebels who have wrought havoc on the region by engaging in mass rape, murder, forced recruitments, creating child soldiers, and using slaves to illegally exploit minerals. The operation, officially known as Kimia 2, was criticized by human rights groups who accused both the army and the rebels of killing and raping innocent civilians. Well, this in turn put the United Nations in a tight spot, protecting civilians while supporting the same army that may be killing them. Earlier this week, the United Nations announced that the military operation would end in a couple of weeks, but no end is in sight for Africa's world war. Today we ask, what is the future of the Democratic Republic of Congo and how will the UN experience there affect international peacekeeping? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or email and we'll take your phone calls on the show as well. Joining me for our discussion is Marie-Claire Faray-Kele, a scientist and activist based in London, from where she joins us today. She works with women's groups in the DRC and the UK to help bring an end to sexual violence, arms trafficking and illegal exploitation of natural resources that have devastated her country. Marie-Claire, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Riz. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start by asking about this strange contradiction the UN finds itself in. The peacekeeping force is effectively backing a government force that's accused of killing the people that the UN is trying to protect. So how has the UN managed to get itself stuck in such a bizarre situation?
Well, the problem is the violence has really been legitimized in the DRC at the moment as a way of accessing to power. And the UN, when it arrived in the Congo in 1999, was really welcome, and people had high hopes in that mission. But the mission was very complex because its mandate was not really clear. And it had an observation mandate first that became a maintenance of peace and then enforcement of peace. But then the problem is that with the legitimization of violence, where we have warlords who are now in position of power in the Democratic Republic of Congo, this has put a very much high impact on the population, because you have now the army of the Democratic Republic of Congo composed of former rebel soldiers and militias, and also former armed groups, foreign arms groups, some of them integrated in the army. So you don't really know who is in the army and who is not. And with the UN now linking operation, going into a Kimia 1 and Kimia 2 with this mixage of rebels group within the army, that has created this sort of chaotic situation where the population have really suffered because they don't really know who is protecting them, who is fighting. So it has really created a serious problem where the United Nations mission has lost confidence, complete confidence. People have lost confidence in that mission.
Right. Let me ask you then, the UN Security Council has a new draft resolution that's going to be voted on this coming Monday, demanding that the DRC army immediately take appropriate measures to protect civilians. And that resolution's already been rejected by the DRC government, which is threatening to expel the UN in retaliation. If the UN does leave, what happens to the civilians?
Well, you know, I mean, the UN has been there. I don't know what is the impact really of peace to the civilian. I mean, whether they leave or they stay, I don't think the situation will really change in the DRC, because at the moment I think that the government has to take charge and be accountable to the population. And I think that this is going to be a turning point for the DRC. It is very, very important for the people in the DRC to take charge of their own country and for the government to be now accountable to the population. And I believe that this mandate should, as it didn't have a strong commitment to protecting the population really from the beginning, I don't think that its going will change anything on the ground, or even its staying will change anything on the ground.
What about the end of that mission, the Kimia 2 mission in the eastern part of the country, where the army has been working with the UN peacekeepers? What difference will it make if that mission is cancelled as is planned by the end of this month?
Well, the Kimia 1 and Kimia 2 mission in the beginning, even the population was not even prepared to this operation. Military operation is not a solution in the DRC situation at the moment, where you have rebels and Hutu refugees from Rwanda who need to be repatriated in their country with non-military solution. Those two military operations were really a disaster and a mistake that was done, and harmful. It was really harmful to the civilian, because right now you don't really know who is in the population, who is a rebel, who is a civilian, and it's not going to change anything really, because the situation will remain the same until we have a political will really to resolve the problem in the DRC, where we know exactly what is the problem. It's natural resources exploitation, bringing in all these armed groups and neighboring countries such as Rwanda and Uganda supporting rebels group. And right now I'm actually coming back from the DRC. I was there in the North Kivu and South Kivu, in Kiwanja particularly, where there was a massacre a year ago. And the population there are really, really pessimistic and very, although they are aspiring to peace, but they are not really seeing where this peace is going to come, because peace is not just about the lack of war or arms, militia fighting. It's also about their own human survival, education, shelter, water, access to water, women's rights, and people are really skeptical because none of this has happened. And for the past 10 years now, the United Nations has been there with a clear mandate to maintain peace, but they've been kind of observing more than even enforcing peace as the population was expecting. And the population is really not aware of what is this mission, because they see all these troops there, but nothing is changing to their life. They're still living in human insecurity.
Let me ask you then, Marie-Claire, then if you know the UN mission does have that unusual factor that they are allowed to enforce peace. I mean, that's quite unusual by UN peacekeeping standards, rather than just be bystanders. Have you ever, I mean, you sound quite skeptical of that mission, and you say many people are. Have you ever seen the UN do anything where it has applied that force, where it has done something to protect civilians? Have you seen that mission in action at any stage at all in the last 10 years?
Well, I read a lot. I have communication with a lot of women's group in the Congo, and the problem is we have seen places where the population was really expecting the UN to enforce peace, such as during the seizure of Bukavu by Laurent Kunda and Mutebuzi. This in 2004 was really a cry out. The population was expecting the UN mission at that time to enforce peace and make sure that the civilians were protected, but they were let down. And there were also occasions, for example, in Kiwanja last year, where 150 people were massacred by the CNDP and its allies, and really the population also felt really abandoned by the United Nations, because some of the peacekeeping troops were only 800 meters away from where the massacre was happening. And also this has happened when the United Nations was there. There was a big battle between Uganda and Rwandan army in Kisangani in 2002, and nothing was happened. And you can really wonder what is the purpose of that mission. We saw in 2006 or 2005 when that's the only time really when we saw that the UN mission was really strategic at that time to make sure that the electoral process was going to happen, and they were supported by U4 mission from the European from the European Union. And this has really demonstrated to the Congolese population at large that mission was there to legitimize the electoral process instead of really protecting the civilian. And during that time, although there were a lot of problems, but that what was sure is that the electoral process was going to happen, and the leadership that was going to be there was going to be put into power. And this has just demonstrated to the population what was really the agenda of that mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where you can see that this is a UN Security Council mandate for of a mission where all these people sitting at the United Security Council, all these countries are really benefiting from the war in the Congo, from the natural resources exploitation for armed trading.
I'll ask you about that in a moment, the resources. But let me ask you one thing to answer. One of our viewers has been standing by patiently on the phone with a question. Alex in the UK, thanks. What would you like to ask? Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, hi, Khan. I just want to comment or ask. I think it is really important to
keep going, Alex.
It is important to know that the situation is complexer than you and think or consider. Historically, the intervention that UN have been making have been based on wrong understanding of what's going on in Congo. And if you can see from the 1960s intervention to other UN troops that have been intervening in Congo, the limited understanding has led even chaos of what they're trying to achieve.
Alex, just because we're running short on time, I'm going to ask Marie-Claire about that. I mean, this evidence of misunderstanding of the UN mission. Of course, you say that the UN mission isn't clear to the people there. The 17,000 UN peacekeepers there for a population of just around 60 million doesn't sound really adequate. Is there any point in even asking for any more UN troops?
Well, no, I'm just going to come back to what Alex has just said, comparing the mission that came in 1960 and during the Congo rebellion, just after the independence, and the current mission. That mission didn't have the strategic or the resources or the human resources that it had right now. In the 60s, it neutralized completely the rebellion, and we saw exactly that this was really to protect the interests of the capitalists who wanted to come into Congo after 1996, after the killing of Patrice Lumumba. But right now, the mission that is there has a different agenda, which is an agenda to protect the multinational interests, and basically not that of protecting any form of the civilian. And the mission has been there for 10 years. I mean, even though they're talking about positive aspect of the mission with regard to the electoral process and the inter-Congolese dialogue, which has only just legitimized those belligerents and all these who took violence as a means of getting into power. So really, we have here an important aspect of the United Nations that need to be reconsidered in terms of its multilateralism and its relevance to what the people are expecting in the Congo.
All right. Well, listen, Marie-Claire, I'm going to take a very short break here. We're back with more of this discussion in a moment. Don't go away.